With 5 billion viewers worldwide, the FIFA World Cup is one of the biggest events ever. But what happens to the empty stadiums when interest dwindles once more? In this video, we look at the worrying fate of the World Cup stadiums in South Africa, Russia, and Brazil. We also examine Qatar's plans for handling this issue and why they have already started deconstructing one of their stadiums. Hi there, viewers. Welcome to a brand new video from Moneyfellas. In this video, we take you through the story of the World Cup and what happens to the stadiums afterward. However, we would appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel and also press the bell icon. Qatar has constructed a complete World Cup infrastructure over the past 10 years, including cutting-edge training facilities, modern stadiums, and improved transportation systems. They have spent a whopping $200 billion in total, which is far more than any other host country has ever spent, especially considering that Qatar had to build the majority of this infrastructure from scratch 4 years earlier. Even $20 billion is a lot of money, especially when you consider that the entire event is over in less than a month. In 2014, Brazil spent $20 billion and Russia spent about $16 billion. The nations anticipate long-term benefits from the infrastructure, in addition to drawing attention from around the world. While the stadiums can be used to host events and generate revenue, the transportation links can revitalize areas that have been neglected. Although it's a bold idea, it's not always the case that vibrant stadiums serve their original purpose indefinitely. There isn't much good to be found in the World Cup stadiums past. We will get to Qatar's other plans later, but for now, let's take a look at what they are desperately attempting to avoid. What transpired in the lead up to the 2018 World Cup? Russia built 9 new stadiums and improved 3 existing ones. The cost of all this is difficult to determine, but it was a significant portion of the $16 billion Russia spent for the entire tournament. When the World Cup ended, Russia decided to lease the stadiums to domestic soccer teams. It was obvious that these stadiums were designed to host matches, and that ticket sales would help pay for ongoing costs. The home team only draws an average of 6,000 spectators, or a mere 15% of the stadium's capacity, even when selling half the tickets to games at the dreaded Olympic Stadium in Sochi. The low number of spectators makes it difficult to cover operating costs. The stadiums leak money, and taxpayers foot the bill. They have been described as white elephants, expensive, pointless, and burdensome. When Kaliningrad's stadium began to sink into a swamp a year after the World Cup, it cost nearly $1 million to save it. Financially, it would have made more sense to just let Kaliningrad's stadium collapse. Only one of Russia's 9 new stadiums is experiencing a successful afterlife. Kazan Arena has been transformed into a multipurpose stadium hosting soccer matches, concerts, car shows, and fashion events. It is also furnished with restaurants, bars, and hotel rooms. Perhaps that is the key to long-term success. The stadium has been transformed into something entirely new. But was that true in other countries 40 years before Russia became the host? Brazil was a country whose stadiums tell a similar story. Brazil is a passionate football nation, but its stadiums are simply too big to fill. The most notable example is the Arena do Amazônia in the remote city of Manaus. The stadium should hold 40,000 people, but the local team does not draw more than 1,000 people. It is leaking money at an alarming rate in excess of $200,000 a month in a desperate attempt to cover costs. Another World Cup stadium, the Estadio Nacional, has recently been used as a bus shelter, while the Das Dumas Arena tries to make money hosting weddings and children's parties. It sounds even worse when we consider that some of these stadiums have only hosted 4 World Cup matches. Was all this worth it for just 6 hours of football? Brazil's taxpayers don't see much of the country living in poverty, and instead of spending money on losing stadiums, they prefer to see their tax dollars spent elsewhere, as Jose Cruz, a Brazilian reporter, summed it up in 2015. Other than the debt we inherited 4 years ago, when the World Cup was held in South Africa, I don't see any lasting effects from the World Cup for Brazil. These stadiums are doing a little better than those in Russia and Brazil. The Moses Mabhida Stadium in the city of Durban now serves as a multipurpose stadium that also hosts events and music concerts. Visitors can ride a sky car to the top of the central arch and even bungee jump. South African stadiums are not all successful. Cape Town's 65,000-seat stadium has never turned a profit. There have even been several calls to demolish the stadium, and that may well be a matter of time. Qatar wants to avoid these mistakes of previous World Cups, especially after their bid ran into a lot of controversy, and nearly 35 officials had to resign after evidence of corruption and bribery. Things got worse in 2013, when Amnesty International reported serious exploitation of migrant workers. Many of these workers were paid poorly or not at all and forced to work in dangerous physical conditions. The nation's reputation was severely damaged when The Guardian published an investigative report in 2021 estimating that more than 6,000 workers had died in Qatar since the country's successful World Cup bid. The only thing they have not faced criticism for is their post-World Cup stadium management plans. What are the plans for Qatar's World Cup venues? To put it into perspective, there are 400,000 Qataris living in the nation, but only 400,000 can fit in the stadiums. Brazil has 220 million people and Russia has 140 million. Qatar has no chance of hosting the World Cup if these nations' stadiums are empty, but Qatar isn't trying to fill them. It wants to transform them. The two largest stadiums, Lusail and Almaty, will be transformed into modern multipurpose halls in the Lusail Stadium. Most of the seats will be removed to make way for stores, cafes, a school, a health clinic, and maybe even some apartments. The Al Bayt will undergo a similar process and be converted into a 5-star hotel, a shopping mall and a hospital in both stadiums. The field will remain at the heart of the other facilities, but it will be used primarily for community events rather than professional soccer matches. 3 other stadiums, Ahmad bin Ali Al Jainab and Al Tumama Stadium, will still be used for soccer matches, but only after the venues are massively downsized. In all 3 cases, capacity will be reduced from 45,000 to 20,000 by removing temporary seats. The Central Stadium in Ekaterinburg Stadium used this strategy, and there were temporary stands at one end. Other countries looking to upgrade their sporting facilities will receive the temporary stands from Qatar. The smaller 20,000-seater stadiums might have trouble filling up because the Qatari Soccer League occasionally only draws a few hundred spectators, but Stadium 974 is the most creative option of all because it can be completely disassembled and rebuilt somewhere else. Future World Cups could use this innovative method of building sports facilities, rather than having new stadiums constructed in each host nation. Brazil used 5 of its former World Cup stadiums when it hosted the Summer Olympics in 2016. However, after the Olympics, the situation remained largely unchanged. The Asian Cup, a global soccer competition for teams from Asia and Oceania, will be held in Qatar in 2024. The Asian Games, an international athletics competition with more competitors than the Olympics, will also be held there in 2030. To prevent the projects from going to waste, they intend to reuse their World Cup infrastructure as much as possible in both cases. Additionally, they intend to host the Olympics, possibly as early as 2036. Only time will tell if any of these plans will really work, but one is already underway. After hosting a match between Brazil and South Korea on December 5, the dismantling of Stadium 974 was set in motion, and according to rumors, the pieces of the stadium will be transferred to Uruguay, which hopes to host the 2030 World Cup. This brings us to the end of the video. Let us know in the comments if you liked the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Until another video.